Scotland wants to introduce split payments under the universal credit system. The DWP apparently have said go ahead, but the Scottish Government is saying that it's waiting for the DWP. Could you clear that up? Maybe Peter can...
I think we're waiting for them. I think we're waiting for them to... we're waiting for them to set out their policy intent.
The IT developing.
Well, I spoke to Shirley-Ann Somerville yesterday, and she didn't raise it with me, but as far as we're concerned, we are waiting for the information from them. But as a result of this committee meeting, I will, of course, get back on the phone and see how we can help.
When you say you're waiting for them to outline the policy, what is it they need to outline in order for the DWP to move on this? Is it something to do with the IT system, which I think, from memory, was part of the concern?
Well, no, I think they, having said that they, having had an Act of Parliament in the Scottish Parliament to say this is what they want to do, we now need the Scottish Government to set out the policy intent, how they want us to do that, and then we can look at implementing that through the IT.
We'll do what the Scottish Government ask on this, even if it means adapting the IT system. Sorry, Chris, you probably want to come in on this.
We'll look at what they want to do and then how we can implement it.
But be in no doubt, we want to help. I had a very good conversation with them yesterday. One of the things I raised was that they don't want to outsource the way we do the assessments on ESA and PIP. But we have contracts coming to an end, so I need to push them to make some proposals about how they're going to handle it instead. But it was a very constructive conversation, and after this, the issue that you've raised here, I will build on that and make sure that we don't have anything outstanding between them as fast as possible.
And I'll get back in touch with my colleagues over there.
Well, we're going back to split payments then. When the Scottish Parliament's made the decision that it wants split payments, and this committee has recommended to the department that if to engage positively with the Scottish Government, and that if that's a success, that split payments should be rolled out to the rest of the UK. So is that something that the department's looking at?
So we're very happy to work with the Scottish Government to understand exactly what they want us to do, and we'll talk about the implementation and what needs to be done to implement it, if that's what they want to do and if it's possible to do so. Now, I'll very happily get back in touch with my opposite number.
This and about the Scottish Government role, you seem to be suggesting that the Scottish Government hasn't told you what they want. Is that true?
They don't. Well, they have not told us how they want to implement this decision made by the Scottish Parliament, which I think is sort of it relates to officially a reserved matter, but I think it's something that we're waiting for them.
Months and months
later,
later,
I agree.
But
so you're blaming them?
Well, tell you what, why don't I will undertake to have another conversation with my opposite number. I don't want to get in a blame game and follow up. They certainly haven't raised it with me.
It's another thing on your weekly list.
I had a very constructive conversation with my opposite number yesterday, which wasn't this sort of tone at all. It was absolutely how can we help each other? Have we gone through our list? And this didn't come up. But I'll pick up the phone after this meeting.
Conversation you'd have on day one, Amber. Not,
yes.
Half a year later.
For me, it's a few weeks later.
I know for you it's 4 weeks. So no, we're thinking about also how your department operates.
There was no indication from that
Scottish Government operates.
There was no indication from that call that they were waiting for anything from us.
And we have regular meetings, and I've got a meeting set up, I think very soon in the new year, where my executive team and I are going up to Edinburgh to have another of our meetings with them, where we're talking about how we can support them implement Scottish choices more broadly and all that they're doing in terms of the devolution settlement, and the relationships are good. I think on this one, I think we're waiting for more information.
Actually, never mind about the relationships. Ruth, can you come in on this?
Yes, I was looking at the arrangements in Northern Ireland for payment of universal credit there, and in Northern Ireland they've been offered for payments to be split already. Where there's children involved, the payments do go directly to, or the child element goes directly to the main carer, and they've also been offered splits where there's no children involved, which seems to be working perfectly fine without any need for lengthy, protracted negotiations. Is that a model that could be used elsewhere in the UK?
We'd be looking at the main carer element. I am interested in that as a potential change of direction. So I'll be doing some work on that. In terms of the split payments, I believe it's the same as with Scotland's proposal, which is it will have to be done by hand. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Which means that it's very difficult for us to consider it on the scale of which we want to do it. And the principle of one payment per household is not a totally new one. Sorry, if I got some...
There's 282,000 potential universal credit claimants in Northern Ireland, so it's just quite staggering that all that degree is going to be done by hand, and that there hasn't been investment in the past in getting the computers to actually manage to work out those split payments. Because, again, in Northern Ireland, they have twice monthly payments by default. The rent payments are paid by default directly to the landlord. So these are things that can be done within universal credit. But I'm afraid this committee has been consistently told that the things are too difficult. Computer says no. So it's just trying to find out what can be done to actually help people and make their circumstances better.
And that's exactly, the whole intent of universal credit is to do what works for the people that we're serving. And conversations happen between the work coach and the claimant to talk through what is required. I mean, you can ask for split payments in England as well. I mean, it's just that when the conversations happen, when people think about the nature of the bills, nature of the circumstances they're in, this is not the right solution. When they are done through manual payments.
And as far as you know, is it all being done manually? Because I think that's what we're struggling to get clarity on. Are they doing it manually, or it is?
Do they have an extra complement of staff to achieve that? And if not, what's happening in Ireland is what we've recommended should be the option for the whole country.
In order to do any of these different types of alternative payment mechanisms, they have to be done manually. A whole host of them.
In Northern Ireland.
And there are a much smaller number of people that we're talking about in terms of the claimants. And
that's not a relevant point, Peter, is it? It's actually the size of the machine serving that number of people. Are you saying you're overstaffed in Northern Ireland compared with the rest of the country, so they've got the spare capacity to do this? Or in Northern Ireland, do they just get on and do it as part of their normal daily routine?
No, in Northern Ireland, and particularly in Scotland, for example, the Scottish choice
is the question.
Yeah, no, I know Northern Ireland is the question. No, I mean, where we're doing things, where things are done manually, they cost more money to deliver, and we need more staff to do it. And that is the nature of the situation. Where there is a policy change which we need to implement, we will look at how quickly we can automate it. And automation is the right solution for any of these different ways of payments. It just takes a lot of, just in the context of everything else we're doing.
Was that part of the £1 billion for the Ulster Unis deal? If you're saying extra money for Northern Ireland, but not for England, where's the fairness in that?
Well,
I mean, that's what we said. Our constituents, all the representations we've had have been to have a universal credit with this flexibility.
With split payments.
The split payment.
And the cost is a one-off one. It's not a regular one, because you then presumably the computer responds to whatever you actually compute into the computer.
Well, I don't agree with the principle, I'm afraid, Mr. Chairman. I think that split payments should be available when there is a particular need, but not as the normal principle in terms of it.
So you disagree with the Northern Ireland policy?
Well, Northern Ireland has a certain amount. Well, they have the right to make that decision. In terms of what I think is
do that without a government.
They have. I have a different view, which is that I think that it is right to have one payment unless there's an exception to it, and we need to make sure that those exceptions are available when people need them. As you will know, housing benefit has always been paid to the one household principle. One of the benefits of having universal credit is that everybody can see how much is coming into the household, and they can anticipate their spending, and they can have more control over their money. And having one household for that, I think, is better.
Can I really?
No, I just went on this one. Then you.
It is on this.
Yes, mine is as well. If one's going to stick with the one payment policy, and given we know the vulnerability for some women and many children with that policy, will the policy be that to have a split payment, the non-carer has to request it, rather than the carer gaining the main part of the allowance plus the children's allowances?
I'm not sure policy is going to be in that respect. I had a meeting last week with Women's Aid and with Refuge. I acknowledged that they want to have split payments as normal, but having talked to them, we are now going to be discussing how to accommodate their concerns so that it can be requested in a way that protects the woman where appropriate.
Different. I wasn't asking for split payments. I was following your wish to have a single payment as the norm. If we're having the single payment as the norm, could that go to the women, and normally the woman is looking after the children and the allowances, and that if there is a split payment, it has to be, generally speaking, the man that requests it?
Well, as I've said, Mr. Chairman, it is my preference to move towards...
Could you take that away and think about it?
Yeah, well, I am thinking exactly about that for the same reasons that the committee has raised it.
Heidi, we're into your questions anyway.
Thank you. Just as a modern woman, Amber, what century are we living in where we say a man and a woman's income is all the same in one lump in a household? The woman, to me, if she's out working and has an element of top-up from Universal Credit because she's working, she deserves to see that. For me, it's gone beyond the domestic violence angle. I just think in modern Britain, women deserve to be recognised, rewarded, supported in their own right. They're not an amorphous blob with the bloke too.
They are, Heidi, and there are many different ways of having families. Man and a woman is just one of them.
But a single payment suggests that you don't have your own identity.
Well, it's because the principle of a single payment is also, let's not forget, to protect the taxpayer, so that people who are funding it know that it's fair. You know, you can have people on low income paying taxes living next door to the people who are receiving it. So having one household receiving the overall payment, I think, is the fair way to do it. And also, this isn't something we've just invented. It used to be the case with housing benefit, which
quite everything was together.
It is. But that is, I find when I talk to people, and I've been to a number of job centres, I have found that people on the receiving end of it have appreciated having one payment for the family, so they can have, and as I say, 60% of the receivers in couples are women already. They can have control and sight over the money. I think as a modern woman, as you say, Heidi, I would appreciate that as well.
Sometimes we have to protect who's not the modern woman.